Hello, magical people of the internet. I am Jen, and welcome to my vlog I never thought I would, where we talk about doing things we never thought we would do and the magical places that they can lead us to. I have a wonderful guest today. She is a filmmaker, a screenwriting teacher, and as of October 2020, a published author, Julia Camara. Hi, Julia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And that was a great intro. I loved it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me to have a chat today. I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm inspired by your work. I watched some of your films online, and you are such a talented filmmaker. And it's so nice to see other female filmmakers getting their work out there. So I just want to let you know you are an inspiration to me personally, and I hope to everybody else out there in the interweb who tunes in.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's great to hear. That makes me feel great. Thank you.
Definitely. So you are originally from Brazil and now you're living in LA and you're a filmmaker. So I'm sure just by that definition alone, you've done quite a few things in your life that you never thought you would do.
Absolutely. I could talk about many different things that I never thought I would do, especially, moving here from another country and doing all the different things that I've done. Yeah, there's a lot of great stories.
Let's pick one for today. And why don't you let us know what it is and where it led you?
I never thought I would make a movie with no screenplay. Yes, I know. I love this
What
reaction.
does that mean?
So the movie came out in 2018, but the process of making this movie started much earlier. The movie's called In Transit. You can watch it on Amazon after I tell you the whole story of how that movie came to be. But I never thought until I started the process of making this movie that I would make a feature film with no screenplay. And this is how it all came to be. I wanted to make a movie. I was also at the time a new mother. My daughter was only a few months old, and I was totally completely lost in the motherhood world. I was actually feeling really disconnected from anything creative, just lost in the world of diapers and itsy bitsy spider and all things, babies. But I started to get that itch again. I come from also having been a screenwriter for quite a few years, and I had done different projects as a screenwriter. You can catch my movies, Open Road and Area Q, on probably on a lot of different channels right now. And then I had shortly before I was actually pregnant. So shortly before she was born, another movie I wrote called Occupants was being produced. And I grabbed my daughter and we went on set for a few days. And I think she was 5 months old. But I was still like, I still had that inkling that I wanted to get out there and I wanted to shoot something. I had this vague idea of what I wanted this movie to be. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I'm like, what if I put two people in the room, two actors, right? And just kind of tell them what I want them to do and see what happens. So this idea wouldn't leave me. I'm like, all right, I want to watch two people actually meet on camera and have a real conversation on camera. And could I do that and still somehow create a story that had a beginning, middle, and end, and that hit a lot of the points that I wanted to hit? I wanted to see two people reacting exactly as if it were real life, right? As if you were meeting someone for the first time, because they were meeting each other for the first time. And that's what I did. And it was an extremely challenging thing to do at times. I was lucky that the actors that I found, Branca Ferrazzo and Oliver Rayon, that they trusted me with this project. And they said, sure, yeah, let's do it. Let's make a movie. And I don't know what's going to happen. And I remember Branca, the night before we were supposed to shoot, she messaged me. She's like, all right, what do I need to prepare? Because I don't have to learn my lines. I have no script to study. What should I do? What do I need to know to come and shoot this movie? And I told her, I'm like, just trust me that, that It will all work out. And it did. And I'm actually, it was very challenging. It was a very long day. We covered so much ground. It was emotionally taxing to, even for me as a director, to show up on set and I'm like, I don't even have, like, I didn't have my storyboards, which I like to do. I didn't even have a shot list. We shot multiple cameras, but I was like, all right, we're going to shoot multiple cameras so that we can later cut. And these are kind of the angles. And then, you know, the camera people were looking at me and going, but what exactly are they going to be doing? And I'm like, well, mostly sitting. They're mostly going to be sitting. All right. So the setup that I had was the following. It's the two people are at the airport waiting for their flights, as I think we've all been, right now it feels like, ooh, airport. It's 2020. I haven't been inside an airport in at least a year.
What is an airport?
Right? Isn't that's such a foreign concept for us in 2020? But I feel like previously to this year, I had a lot of experience, you know, being from Brazil and flying, you know, once a year to visit family. And, you know, I have friends kind of spread out all over the US. I used to do a lot of travel. It's so sad to think about that. It's like, what is travel? But that is something I once in my lifetime used to do a lot of. And I always felt like you meet fascinating people at airports. Sometimes when you're stuck and you have nowhere to go, right? Or even on a flight, I feel like anytime I flew by myself, and I flew often back and forth to Brazil by myself, I would meet someone on a flight and they would end up telling me their life story and vice versa. And then you kind of go your separate ways. You never see that person again. But for that, you know, for that, however many hours you were on that flight, you kind of have this human connection, this like true human connection that sometimes disappears shortly after that. And that's what I was trying to capture with this. So it's two people. They are stuck at the airport. One of them missed their flight. The other one's flight was delayed. So they end up like late at night. I wanted it to feel like it was just the two of them at the airport. You know, they open up, they talk about life, and it becomes, for those two people, becomes life-changing, this like chance encounter. And it was trippy. Like they had to be extremely vulnerable, right? They had to trust me that I knew what I was doing, and I wasn't sure that I knew what I was doing. And they had to be extremely vulnerable with one another. And they actually never met. Like I didn't even tell them each other's names because I didn't want them to like be tempted to Google and be like, ooh, this is what this person looks like. Oh, okay. And I mean, it sounds silly thinking back, but I really was so invested in like, no, this is going to be real. Like when we broke for lunch, I asked them like, don't talk to each other at lunch, please. You can talk to each other after we're done shooting, but like at lunchtime, I don't even want the two of you to chit chat. Like I really want everything to happen while the cameras are rolling. And I think what we ended up with is very interesting to watch. It's very real.
I'm definitely intrigued. Like, I definitely need to go watch this tonight now. So I have a couple of questions. The first question is, did you give either of them some sort of backstory, or did they have to draw on everything from their own life or their own imagination? Like, how was that kind of constructed?
I did give them backstories. That was the one piece of quote unquote writing I did. Well, I also had an outline of where I wanted the story to go, but at the same time, I let them go where it took them in the moment. I think there was only a moment or two, and there's only maybe one chunk of two of the film that I cut out completely. I'm like, yeah, we ended up didn't using this, and I redirected. But most of what you see is what they came up with on the fly based on the backstory that I gave them. And with Branca, with the actress, she, you know, I gave her the backstory, and she told me she wanted to do something slightly different that was very close to what had happened to her in real life. So we went with it, and I'm like, oh, that's even better. She's like, all right, how about if instead of this, I do this, because that's really similar to something that happened to me in my life. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. Absolutely. And the only other thing that we did, and that was the plan, that was a plan that I had from day one. My husband, Tim Aldridge, was my producing partner, and my camera person throughout this entire movie. And I think it was his suggestion that we have like some flashbacks so that we have something to cut to. So it's not just those two people for the entire like 70, 80 minutes that we're in there. The footage that we came with, and we shot everything with no permits and just us and the actors running around LA and grabbing shots here and there. And I think it turned out great. It gave us space to break away from that room when we needed to, and to kind of, show the passage of time a little bit by cutting away from that one room. But it's mostly in that one room and those two people talking.
And did you shoot the whole project in one day?
Yes, the meat of the movie, which is these two people talking at the airport, that was all shot in one 12-hour day. And then the flashbacks, like we shot for like another half a day here, another half a day there. But mostly, I would say totally we shot for 4 days. If you count the little days here and there that we shot, 90% of this movie was shot in one day. Yes.
That's so fascinating. I really am looking forward to taking a look at this movie, because it's so rare that we have the courage to kind of like go with an instinct that isn't necessarily like fleshed out, and just kind of take a risk and then find a team of people to come on board and take that risk with us. So that's just completely like exhilarating to me, especially like the performer in me. The producer in me would like have a heart attack and be like, how do I do this? I don't even know how to do this job. But the actor, the performer in me would be like, oh yeah, giddy up. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. So that's so much fun. I'm going to segue a little bit, because it's so ironic to me that like you made this movie with no script. Meanwhile, like you teach screenwriting at UCLA.
Right. I mean, that to me, like I had a hard time wrapping my own brain around it. Like of all the things that I teach, I started teaching after I made the movie, but all the things that I had been taught about screenwriting and that I had pretty much learned, throughout my career, and how, I take so much pride in being a prolific screenwriter. I have a lot of different scripts out there. Even before I had anything produced, like I had written, 10, 15 scripts. And so it was hard for me to go, okay, so let that label of screenwriter go for a minute and just become a filmmaker, right? And someone who's willing to experiment with, and I mean, that's one of the things too, that our film In Transit then ended up playing at a lot of festivals as an experimental film. And yet I ended up putting a disclaimer at the end, or at the beginning, actually. I forget where the disclaimer, I think the disclaimer is at the beginning, that we actually shot it with no script and in one day. Because when we played at festivals, people were like, how is this experimental? It feels like a pretty straightforward story. And I'm like, well, because you don't know how he did it.
Yes, that's so funny. You're a storyteller, whether it's, through a like prolifically written script, or just telling a story with a lens and with actors or images, it's still storytelling. Wow. I was impressed with you before, but now after hearing that, I'm just like, oh my goodness, this woman is my hero.
Thank you. You're way too kind. I was terrified through the entire process. And I don't think until we had like a first cut of the film, I don't think we fully believed that we had done it. It's like we had days when we're like, we did something. I don't know. Is it a movie yet? Maybe. I do laugh at the paradox of like teaching screenwriting and having this film that was made with no script.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the screenwriting courses that you teach at UCLA?
So I teach writing the first screenplay. It's a four-part course, writing the first screenplay, part 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each course is 10 weeks. So that really gets you from the basics of like figuring out what the story is. And then if you take all of them, you walk out with a completed script. So it's a great class for anyone who's like always wanted to write, but has no idea where to start or what to do first, or what do I do? Like, I highly recommend taking all 4 parts of this class and you walk out with a completed script, right? If you do all the work, right? It's like, you have to do it. You have to write it. I'll teach you how to write, but I won't write it for you.
So each part of the course is 10 weeks, like part 1 is 10 weeks.
Yes.
And then part 2. So realistically, if you wanted to take all 4 courses, it would take you like 4 semesters to get through them all.
Yeah. So yeah, if you start in January, which I have my part 1 starts in January, and it's all remote now because COVID, but you can be at home. You don't have to drive all the way to the UCLA campus anymore. But if you start in January, by fall, you will be done with part 4. So it will take you like the whole year to do it. Choose 2021 to be the year that you finish that script. Start in January and in December.
So you said there's also another course that you're teaching about inclusion in screenwriting. What's that about?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I also teach a class called Inclusive Screenwriting. We just wrapped up the fall quarter. I just wrapped up one version of that class. I started teaching that in the spring of 2020, which the timing felt perfect with all the protests for racial justice. And, meanwhile, I'm in my classroom talking about like, how do we create a universe where, with our storytelling, where there is inclusion for all, where marginalized groups are seen. How do we not write any stereotypes and, get rid of all that as the world was erupting in protests and cries for racial justice. So yeah, so inclusive screenwriting, we talk a lot about inequalities in the world and how not to create those on the screen, but we also do a lot of screenwriting. We do a lot of workshopping. It's an awesome class. And I will be teaching that again in 2021. Another class that I am teaching, and that also starts in January at UCLA, is writing a low budget feature. I come from a world of making a lot of low budget films, and there's an art to them. There's an art to making an independent film and writing a screenplay that can be picked up by a producer and be shot on a very low budget. So that course also starts in January with writing the first screenplay at part 1. I'm doing those 2 classes now. And then inclusive screenwriting also coming shortly back in 2021, either spring or summer.
That's so exciting. Okay, so we'll have the links below. Perfect. You definitely didn't waste your 2020 between your teaching and now you have a published book. You are a published author, and your book is called That's What She Wrote. Can you tell us a little bit about this book? I'm assuming it's a feminist piece, female empowerment all the way.
Absolutely. So That's What She Wrote is a collection of interviews with amazing female screenwriters. I used to have a monthly column for a very cool website called Ms. in the Biz. And the site is now archived, but I had all these interviews already in my hands. I really felt like, wow, if they were all together in one place, how much information, because there's so much good advice. I love asking other writers, especially female writers, about like, what are the mistakes that you've made? What are the hard lessons? What would you have done differently? Or what are the things that have given you great success? Or how do you react to rejection? And I see that with my students too. Like, I try to talk about my failures and my rejections just as much as like, oh, I know this works. Because I feel like we can get discouraged so easily. Like, we don't share our failures ever, right? Like, especially with social media now, you only share the amazing things that you're doing, but not like, this was a flop. This didn't work out. This project didn't go, or I was fired and replaced. We don't talk about those things. So I love to ask those questions, as well as questions about successes and even asking like people's life trajectory, right? Like, how did you start? Did you always wanted to be a writer? How do you go from here to there? And, and sometimes just flat out advice, like, what would you tell someone today trying to break in? To have those perspectives from, like, I think there's only over 15 interviews in the book. So all those different perspectives of different women who are all writers. They're all WGA members. And there's a lot of my own experiences. And you will also read more about the making of In Transit, because I wrote about that too. And you will get to read a little bit about my inclusive screenwriting course, because I wrote about that, because I feel like 2020 is the year that you can't ignore. Like, you cannot ignore all the current events and how they've affected us all. So there's a lot of like, you know, in this post-COVID world, what are we gonna do? It's the elephant in all of our rooms, right? Like,
definitely. And I love the fact that you mentioned you ask people about what went wrong and to talk about their mistakes and their failures, because we end up learning so much more from our mistakes and from our failures than from our successes. And learning about what people did wrong is such a huge gift in terms of like our own education. And you're so right. In the social media era, everyone is just posting their fake fabulous life. Sure, we all have fabulous moments in our life, but nobody's life is all fabulous all the time. Whether you're like a huge celebrity or you have nothing to do with the entertainment business and you work a regular job, like everybody has highs and lows. And this is something that we're just not really seeing. I actually started this vlog because I was very candid about my novel being a failure.
Wow, that's amazing. And again, think of all the people you can help. Like, if there's someone out there who was maybe gonna try something similar to what you did, but then they can watch your experience and go, oh, okay, I'll try something else then. Sharing our failures it helps everybody. I do that with my students quite often. I'm like, hey, don't get discouraged. You know, I've made this mistake too. I've been told this, you know, so here's how you go around it, and maybe do it in a different way so you don't have to, you know, quite struggle as much as I did.
Fabulous. So we will have all the links below. We'll have the Amazon links to your films. We'll have the UCLA links to your courses, and then we'll have your website, your social media links, and of course, the link to your book, That's What She Wrote. Thank you so much for coming on, Julia, and sharing your story. You are a true inspiration. You are a female trailblazer. I hope one day I get to work with you in the future.
I know, I would love to. I feel like we would collaborate very well. Let's do it. Let's make it something happen, right? Let's do it right now. I don't know. We'll brainstorm some ideas.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much. Everybody in the interweb, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll have all the links below. And I'd like to challenge you to do something that you never thought you would do. Let us know what it is in the comments, and let us know where it leads you. And have a beautiful day. Don't forget to like and subscribe.